Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Norman Beach. Norman is an accomplished adventurer, author, speaker, and a dedicated family man. The bulk of our conversation today centers around Norman and his son James's expedition across the Atlantic back in 2010, rowing across the Atlantic back in 2010. However, we discuss a wide array of topics, such as the challenges of planning and executing for a significant adventure such as that, the importance of risk management and safety, the benefits of outdoor pursuits for personal growth, certainly when it comes to young people, and the power of overcoming obstacles. So we delve deep into how these experiences shape character, foster resilience, and create lasting bonds. So please enjoy this conversation with Norman Beach.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes we got a deadline. It just helps, sort of, as you say, focus the mind, gives you a bit of motivation, and you crack on with it. Then
I imagine you know plenty about deadlines. Then.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the thing, really. Yes, with the different sort of adventures we've had, there's always been a start time.
Yeah.
To it, so you've got to, wherever you are, in weeks or months away from that, plan towards that as the date where it's got to go.
Mm.
But usually I try to have a buffer, so we're all ready to go before that, because there's always something that crops up that can't actually be anticipated at the beginning. So you always have a little bit of a sort of a cushion there.
Life gets in the way at times and throws you something up.
Yeah.
What was the sort of, when you were planning for everything, what was the biggest sort of challenge that you had to overcome in terms of that sort of planning stage?
Well, certainly in terms of for the Atlantic Row, I think there's three elements to it. One is, unless you've already got an incredibly healthy bank balance at the start, you've got to sort of factor in you're going to be raising funds for the project. So there's a fundraising dimension. So that's one area of planning. And then you're also preparing to do something which is quite physically and mentally challenging. So you've got all of that training side of things to get ready. And then you've got a boat, and you need to prepare the boat and make sure it complies with the regulations of the event, and it's appropriately equipped, and you know how to use everything on it. So you've got these three different sort of circus rings, if you like. That you're trying to operate in each of these areas. So the easiest one actually is the physical training dimension. It's easy. May not always be that exciting, but it's easy to sit on a rowing machine and listen to some music and do a training session for an hour or whatever.
Yeah, I suppose even though it's probably not massively easy to do that training, the instructions are pretty straightforward. Get better at rowing.
Yeah. So that is the danger, that you can focus on that to the detriment of having a project that's funded, and you get yourself and the boat to the start line. So James and I did try and break up the tasks, and similarly Christine and my daughter Lydia and other sort of family and friends got involved in different ways with pursuing contacts and taking all ideas and things. So although James and I were the people that were going to be in the boat going across the ocean, but the actual sort of team involved in getting us to the start line was far larger than just the two of us. And I think that's probably quite a good thing there, because no one knows everything. No one has got all the contacts. So the more that you can expand that foundation, if you like, I think you're the for it, because you suddenly find you've got support that you haven't necessarily thought about, or perhaps wouldn't have
Sure.
without those other people coming on board.
Well, it's an interesting element because you mentioned early on in the book. I managed to read some of it
Oh, yeah,
this week.
Yeah.
No, but it on Audible. So I'm actually dyslexic, so I'm really good with Audible. Kindle, I'm just a bit slower. Anyway,
Okay,
but I've been reading it this week, and you mention self-indulgence as
yes,
sort of one of the emotions that you had to contend with.
yeah,
And I suppose, looking at it now, you look at probably one thing that helped with that was, do you think, like that family element? Because it wasn't, in some elements you could sort of look at it as being sort of individualistic, but then actually it's really quite beautiful in the way that it brought in all the family, and of course your son, who did it with you.
Yeah.
And you said with Christine and Lydia helping out as well.
Yeah.
So do you think that was part of what allowed for that balance by sort of bringing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we were rowing to support a charity called WaterAid as well. So
yes,
that sort of expands your horizons again a little bit there, away from yourself, to the fact that you're trying to do something which will change other people's lives, really.
Yeah.
But,
how much did you?
Say again?
How much did you raise?
Well, the money is still going up little by little, because
Right.
we do a sort of a presentation or a talk. People often will make another
Oh, amazing.
presentation, so it gradually creeps
Yeah.
up. So we're just shy of £45,000.
Wow.
So originally we'd set a target of £30,000, which was enough at the time then for WaterAid to be able to put in a water supply and sanitation, so toilets, for a village of about 1,500 people in Tanzania. So in the end, we went past that, and so that was great, really. Just to be able to have that. So that sort of opened up the sort of horizons that, it's not just something that we are interested in doing, something I was interested in doing, but it becomes a project that is going to make a difference to other people. Well, they wouldn't have known we were doing it, obviously.
Yeah.
They were the beneficiaries of the work.
Sure.
We were supporting WaterAid.
How did you go about? Sorry to interrupt. How did you go about sort of looking, like, where did that target come from? Because obviously that's probably, you've got to get that right, haven't you? Because it's too much.
Yeah.
Or too little. You kind of, was there a sort of, a formula or something that sort of helped you arrive at that figure?
I think in the end we tried to sort of look at how much would the rowing boat, when it's all fitted out, be worth second hand. So we bought a boat that was just a shell, so it's a fiberglass shell, and then we kitted it out with the rowing positions, the rowing seats, all the safety kit, the batteries, the water maker, the solar panels, the oars, all this kit that had to go on it.
Yeah.
And we had a look and saw what sort of price people were able to sell that for second hand.
Right.
And then we sort of put in another sort of, nearly half as much again as a guess. So it was a bit of a guess.
Yeah.
That as a target, but I mean, it's interesting now because people actually do continue to do this event that we took part in. And I think now, just maybe partly because it's better known, but also they've got better media coverage for it. People have found acquiring sponsors as being perhaps slightly more straightforward. So,
right. So they sort of streamline the process for you now.
Yeah, and I think because of that greater media coverage, connection that the event's got. The amount that people have raised has gone up as well. But there we go. Yeah, that's
Thanks to you guys trailblazing, that's why.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, well, it's always interesting, isn't it, when you look at things like that? You're always on the shoulders of giants before you. So yeah, there's the real pioneers, and then there's people that have gradually sort of benefited from that. So yeah, I mean, I suppose everyone that takes part is adding something further to the pool of knowledge.
Sure.
And yeah.
What about one of the things I thought about was, because obviously to have that drive in, you mentioned in the book about you sort of early on in life having that dream to sort of go off on an adventure. Do you think if this was 100 years earlier that you would tackle something like that without the technology?
Well,
that was still in you, or
I think you go with probably what you know at the time. So 100 years ago, whenever the forefront of thinking was, people felt that was as safe as it could be, and then things move forward. I mean, having read the accounts of various sort of explorers and adventurers, I think we were in a privileged place, and this probably helped family and friends as well, that anyone that could switch on a computer and get an internet connection could actually know where we were on the ocean at any time. With satellite phone technology, we were able to speak to anyone that had a phone number, really, as long as we could afford to pay the bill. But you did have that level of connection, and if we needed to get some emergency help, there are a number of ways we could have done that. Whereas you go back 100 years and you think, well, if something went wrong on an expedition crossing the Antarctic, it was months and months before anyone would ever know that there was a problem, and any relief would get out to see what had happened, whether there was anyone to rescue. I think from a mental point of view, I mean, that's quite a big factor in making that sort of adventure, I guess, a bit more accessible, because there's already quite a lot going on that you're having to process and deal with mentally, but knowing that you have got several ways of communicating with the outside world. So, for example, if the sat phone had stopped working, we had what's called an EPIRB, it's like an emergency positioning beacon.
Right.
So, if you activate that, the Coast Guard in the UK know all the details you already put into this EPIRB, so they would know your position and would organise a search and a rescue. So we had 2 of those beacons on board, plus a sat. So already you got 3 ways of attracting attention to that.
Sure.
Well, obviously you're hoping not going to need it, but I think for yourself, it puts you in a different place than just being out there knowing if something goes wrong, it's all about us sorting it out, because no one's ever going to.
It's one less worry.
Yes, I think so.
It's and there's a lot of things to be worried about, I suppose.
Yes.
Or to keep yourself busy.
I think overall we didn't sort of go day to day in sort of fear and trepidation that something was going to go wrong. I think we prepared as well as we could, and we knew we had systems on board that would cope with most things.
Sure.
Had sort of a certain amount of redundancy there, so there was like a fresh water supply on the boat.
Right.
Water maker packed up, and we had a sort of a spare water maker that you could use for the hand pump that didn't require electricity from the battery. So there's quite a few things there that you knew well.
But did you have did you have any support in terms of bringing on supplies, or was it totally?
No, what's interesting about in the time when we did it, you had to have 90 days of supplies on board the boat.
Right.
And the whole idea of it is that you are self-contained and that you wouldn't be resupplied. So one of the race rules, as it were, is that you're not resupplied by other boats or anything of that nature. So that's all checked before you started. I think now, because the boat design has changed, the actual crossing times has gone down remarkably. So I think instead of
really
90 days, they now have to take 60 days of food and rations on board. So, yeah.
Oh, so because they've got quicker, you don't have to have as much weight.
Yeah.
Right.
Those two things go probably hand in hand. The boats are designed slightly differently, and the boat speed has improved. So that's helped then also by not having quite so much weight of supply. So they've reduced, in a way, the food cargo by a third.
Yeah.
So that's all helpful.
So talk to me about nutrition and stuff then. So what was that like in terms of getting enough your macros?
It is tricky because you're using over 5,000 calories a day. It's very difficult for the body to process 5,000 calories.
Sure.
So you've got this whole thing of you're wanting to have sort of high nutrient, high energy sort of food, but you're also aware that probably you can't eat that amount. So we try to put on a stone of healthy body mass.
Yeah.
Because typically by the end, most people had lost a stone of body weight. So James and I were going into it more sort of bulked up, I suppose, than we normally would be. But by the end, we had lost weight. So I think our end weight was like a stone below normal. So I think I was around 14 stone when we set off.
Yeah.
Normally I'm about 13. And then I was just over 12 stone. So so you've lost quite a bit of body mass during that time. Yeah.
And do you have to sort
of eat stuff? So
well, that's it. I suppose there's only so much you can put your liver through. Because,
yes.
If you're putting all that all that fuel in. Did you have to sort of prioritize carbohydrates, or did you have what was the split for that?
Yeah, how did we do? Well, we did use dehydrated rations in the main from a company called Expedition Foods, and they try and sort of include in each of these packets of what you're eating the sort of minerals, nutrients, and a balance of carbohydrate and protein and fat and so on. So we relied on that to some extent, but also I think in our own thinking we had quite a carbohydrate-rich breakfast of
sure,
sort of like a ready porridge and then some cereal bars, and that tended to be the sort of usual breakfast. But then at lunchtime and in the evening, we had then had one of our dehydrated meals and snacks that we took on during the day. So it might have been some biscuits or jelly babies, nuts, just different things really, partly to keep the variety. I think often what people say is whatever you've tried in your training to eat and you've enjoyed, it's good to take some other stuff as well, because sometimes you just get to a point where you want something different, or as much as you
try and break up the days.
as much as you thought you liked whatever it was that you take with you, that can change. So we did try and have some luxury items in there. So a tin of peaches can taste quite amazing. So we had some tins of cling peaches. So you get these sort of like nice half peaches. And I think maybe it was a combination of the texture of the food and the fact that it's in the sugary syrup, that was just amazing to have that. Christine's mum makes an amazing Christmas cake. And a vacuum pack machine, and we packed up, Christmas cake. And again, I think the fact they're different texture, obviously quite a high energy for us. That was all very, very good to have that there. So each day on board the boat, we had a bag labelled for that day. So day 1, day 2, and basically we tried to work it out that everything that was in that bag you needed to eat that day.
Yes, whether you felt like it or not.
Yeah. So that was in there. And there were treats. I mean, particularly for rowing at night time, we had some small bars of chocolate that company sponsored, and they were great at night time. Have a couple of cubes of those every half hour on your shift, and it just sort of gave you a little sort of bit of motivation. I've got half an hour more rowing, and I get a couple of cubes of chocolate and stuff. So that was quite
sort of leveraging the dopamine system there.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Making sure they're laid out in front to sort of keep. That must be really important, like you say, with
origin. You do need those motivating sort of factors through the day. I mean, we tried to have a sort of a set routine in a way on the boat each day, so we knew which shifts we were rowing. So we rowed in a 2-hour rotation, so you knew when your shift, the row was going to be. But if it wasn't night time, because the cabin got so hot, it was difficult to be in there really to get rest. So we then tried to factor in other jobs that were useful to do. So the water maker had to be run and have a water production system going on. We got a lot of messages sent to us as email that Christine was processing. So we just got the text. We didn't get pictures of somebody else's dog out for a walk or a set from their back garden, which would have chewed up a lot of download time on our sat. For sure. All of that was stripped out. We just got the text. But each day, and it was probably about 11 o'clock, I think it was, James did this sort of public broadcasting service all the messages that had come in. So that was, a real motivating thing. You knew that was going to come up each day, and you think, I wonder who's got back in touch with us today. And then also on board, we ran a blog. So probably the first 5 days we were at sea, that was a bit sketchy because neither of us felt brilliant. We weren't particularly well, I was physically sick at one point, but I felt much better after that. James wasn't sick. We just felt rubbish for quite a number of days. And it does throw you off, really, because you were sort of trying to get used to the regime that you had on board in terms of these shifts and your sleep pattern being a bit disrupted. And then, you were just aware, just the motion of the boat. You were trying to get used to life at sea on that. So the first couple of days, the blog was a bit sketchy because it was difficult really to get that excited about tapping away on the to write anything. But we broke through that, and then we had this plan that each day we would try and put together something that rather than saying, well, we're looking at the sky again, or the sea's still there, or just sort of stuff that very quickly isn't interesting to people. We tried to sort of draw into the blog the events of the day and sort of dress that up in a little bit of a story about something. So we had a few fun things. So we had to go one day describing the accommodation on the boat in the style that the estate agent would like. So we did that. And some schools use that. English lessons to get children to write in particular styles. And so I only got an email back from this school teacher saying, we've used your your
Really?
yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
They're doing that to buy get it styled the that thing. So that was quite fun getting feedback. But we also had stuff where mysteriously we'd done some washing of socks and pants and some shirts on the boat, and we were drying these on the oars that we weren't using, that just run along the side of the boat on some oar rests, and we didn't have a lot of pairs of socks or pads. We lost some of these overboard. So we then wrote a blog about this mysterious gang that was operating on the ocean. They were doing a sort of steal to order. But I think so. That was, I mean, again, that was just all very silly, but it was good fun. And then,
It was, to keep the mind creative and
yeah. Well, we also
outside the box.
given this mascot to take with us, which was a child's bath toy. So it was only like a couple of inches long, but you could wind it up, and if you dropped it in the water, the arms and the legs would paddle away. They would actually, move itself along.
Yeah.
So this bath toy was called Joe the Swimmer. And we noticed on packets of Jelly Babies that the Jelly Babies had different names. So one of them was called Bubbles, and that was the yellow Jelly Baby. It was called Bubbles. But we must have commented on this somewhere, and then we got an email from a friend of ours saying, was there any romance on board the boat between Joe the Swimmer and Bubbles the Jelly Baby? So that gave a whole new line of sort of stories that got sort of dreamt up every so often. So that was, again, a bit silly, but it amused us, and people got into it. I mean, there was over 2,000 people following this blog in the
Wow.
and chipping in questions and things. So that, when you're looking at motivation, that was quite an exciting thing to have. And for the whole voyage, we tried to set ourselves targets. So this was a different motivation. There's no signpost that says, Antigua, so many miles, or,
Yeah.
it's just up to you. I mean, we did know how far there was still to go, because the sat now on the boat would easily tell you that.
Mhm.
But we tried to break the whole voyage down into 500-mile chunks, which is still a huge bit, but we tried to have a special celebration every 500 miles.
Yeah.
So one of these turned out to be, we quite liked, what are they called? Jammy Dodgers.
Yeah.
So every 500 miles, we made sure we had a packet of Jammy Dodger, and that got broken out as a bit of a celebration. So on one occasion, we got some emails saying from people they were looking forward to us getting to the next 500 miles because they were going to have a Jammy Dodger party. This guy had invited friends into his house, and they had all these packets of Jammy Dodgers. But
It's all very English, isn't it?
it was, and the great thing with these, it's a completely unsociable hour when we got to that particular marker.
Yeah.
People had stayed up till whatever it was, 2:00 or something in the morning, and then got in touch with an email to say, we had our party at whatever time it was in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Just knowing people are doing that,
Yeah.
although you can't physically see them, but you got those messages.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? Because if you think, well, imagine it now and what the technology is like now. Imagine you could probably do a video call or something now. And have you gained something or lost something there? It's that something quite beautiful about it just being text. It's almost like receiving a letter.
Yes, yeah.
And I mean, it's great that we can do this now as well. You'd be able to see each other virtually and stuff, but it's an interesting thought to look back on how it was, and
Yeah. I mean, possibly for different personalities, it works in different ways. I mean, some people might become upset that they've got like a video call with their children. That might not be so good, or it could be Britain. I suppose it depends how you work.
Well, I suppose, a lot of people might get into these challenges for different reasons to get away from life and stuff like that. You don't strike me as that sort of man, but
it could. I guess you could sit and get away from it all, or for a while anyway.
Yeah.
So I think so. What I was going to say though with all of that is, I think in terms of motivations, it operated in a number of different levels, and each one of those was important. So whether it was just a small thing in terms of the daily structure on board, or some of the bigger things of messages from people, that was all good. But we had some fun things. We had some cards that we got from Tesco's that had like little riddles on them. So we took it in turns to be the person that was like the question master.
Yeah.
At the evening meal, and then you had to pose the other person some sort of riddle, and then they would see if they could come up with an answer. So some of that was a bit silly, but that was good fun. We had the story Treasure Island on board.
Yeah.
So each day we did a Jackanory. So I tried to read a bit of Treasure Island each day, and have a go at doing different voices for the different characters and stuff. That was quite, again, it was a bit silly, but it just sort of meant it punctuated another bit of the day, and that was, I think for us that was just important, and it worked for the two of us. Yeah.
So you seem like a pretty chilled out guy, and seemed like you'd be quite cheery most of the time. But was there sort of any darker moments? Were there any arguments? What's the other side of that?
Yeah, that's a good question, really. I mean, one of the things that we did do at the start, we set some parameters for ourselves, because we were aware there were occasions people that got to the end of these sorts of things, and they just got off the boat and never talked to each other again.
Wow.
So so we drew up a couple of sort of ground rules or sort of things that we were aiming to work together on. So one of them was that we would be closer together, father and son, at the end than we were at the start. So one of them focused on relationship.
I love that.
And one of them focused on doing the best we could to represent the charity WaterAid and to support them. And the other one was to be safe. We wouldn't do something that compromised the safety of either one of us. So, because it's easy to think, okay, well, I'm going to take a shortcut and I won't bother clicking on the safety line today, or I'll do something else. So there were particular sort of safety protocols that we'd agreed on, and we made sure we stuck with that. Even though sometimes you could think, well, it's quite a nice day today, do I need to be clipped on? But we stuck with that, because if someone falls off and the other person's asleep, well, that's pretty much a sort of a worst case scenario, but one very difficult to recover from.
I suppose protocols have to be at the forefront in anything like that.
Yeah.
And that's what they're there for, isn't it?
Yeah.
To sort of, stop the mind from slipping or...
Yeah. And I think we'd spent some time with a sports psychologist as well, and one of the there's a number of useful things that this lady that talked through with us, but one of them was using a sort of a 1 to 10 scale. So every so often we would say, how are you feeling today? And, 1 to 10. So if someone said, well, I'm only feeling 4, what's going on? What's happening? So I think if from that they'd said, I'm just fed up with yeah, the way you do the cooking or the way you do this, whatever, and it's getting to me. There was an outlet before it had got to, be a disastrous moment where arguments break out and everyone stopped talking. When James and I probably aren't like that anyway. I think we would have sorted things out before that. But I think as well, we both sort of knew each other well enough that you could sense how the other person's doing and whether they needed some encouragement or just needed a bit of space and not to be hustled about something. But that little sort of how you doing 1 to 10, I think we both found that helpful because we both had to answer that question. It sort of just helped.
They're interesting tools for any relationship, really, aren't they?
Yeah, but it helped monitor things so you didn't end up that we both got to one at the same time, and there was no understanding of how we got to that point. Why didn't we do something before to change what was happening?
I think that's a useful tool to have. I was speaking to someone today, and we were talking about someone at work and their boyfriend, and basically said that kind of same thing where, why don't you check in once a week? How are you feeling? Is there anything?
Yeah.
And it's, I think we rarely approach things like that, but it's...
Yeah. I mean, having said that, we did have both of us some difficult moments. When I'd saved up my holiday from 2 sort of holiday years with permission of my employers, because by doing that, it sort of covered the time I was going to be away from work. But the weather wasn't particularly good in the year we were doing this event. So I think the aggregate time of all the boats that took part in the year we were doing it, it's probably still got the record as being the slowest aggregate crossing time of the boat.
Really?
So we're ending up being at sea for longer than we'd anticipated. So
was that due to that? Was it the beginning you were sort of blown towards Africa? Did you say?
Yeah, a little bit, but it was more. I mean, the time of the year the event takes place, it's supposed to coincide with getting support from the trade winds blowing from Africa across to the Caribbean. So we did get some of that, but we also got a lot of side winds, and that's harder to row across the waves with the waves following you, as it were.
Right.
But also, I mean, 1 week we were on parachute anchor because there was a headwind. So once the wind is sort of greater than probably about 10 miles an hour, but you can't physically row. Well, you look as if you're rowing, but you're actually not making any progress. You're either at a standstill, or you think you're rowing, but you're actually getting pushed back.
Just a waste of spare energy.
Yeah. So you had to have with you what's called a parachute anchor. So it does look like a parachute which you deploy to the ocean. And as the boat pulls away from that on this long road line, it opens the parachute, and that sort of reduces the distance that you get blown.
Right, so it's sort of like it adds resistance to...
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The water's too deep to be able to put an anchor down the ocean. That's the only thing.
Right.
But, I mean, we're on that parachute anchor for a whole week.
Really? So no rowing 1 week?
The whole 1 week on parachute anchor, which, again, I think we were fortunate in the weather forecast initially. We showed, okay, we're going to have this headwind for 1 day. So we thought, okay, we'll go with that. Then at the end of that, that wind's going to be there tomorrow as well. So we thought, okay, we've done 1 day, so we can do 2 days.
Yeah.
But at the start, if we'd known, okay, it's going to be 7 consecutive days here, mentally that probably would have been a difficult obstacle to overcome. But knowing okay, we've done 1 day, we can do 2 days. We've done 2 days, we could do 3 days. That sort of helped get us through it. And, we set up a sort of a different routine actually for the parachute anchor day. So we tried to focus on getting some extra sleep, checking stuff on the boat was all functioning, and it was just, mainly it was extra rest, I suppose, but we tried to eat a bit more as well. Of any of the sort of previous day's rations that hadn't got eaten up, we tried to make sure, we'd used up as much of any leftover food we could. That was about all that you could do. You were very limited, but try and keep thinking through what is there that we could do today, because we have got some extra time. So there are a few bits and bobs like that, but mainly it focused on let's just rest. And as soon as we can go, we're sort of full on it again. So that was the focus on that. But and I think for James, this was the sort of in the last quarter of the voyage, we had quite a sort of a tricky sea we were negotiating with, waves hitting the boat from the side, and he got knocked off the rowing seat. And it jarred his back. So that ended up just being really painful. So the thing that people would say is, okay, well, you need to rest. But the thing is, he had to, he had to do some rowing every day. And when the wind went to be back in the trade wind position, so we were in like a following sea, the boat just sort of went up and down on the waves, so that was okay. But as soon as it went sideways on, you've got this motion, and that was then jarring his back. So, that was difficult for Jem, but it's difficult for both of us because we tried lots of things. So we sort of ended up thinking, well, you have a rest for a day, and I'll just do more rowing. So I did more rowing. James had a rest for the day. But I just got more tired, and he couldn't get enough rest to get over it. So that didn't really work. And then we ended up doing sort of like, just to get him out of the cabin and to do some rowing so I could get some rest. We'd end up like on his shifts, me doing like a back physio session, trying to sort of back out a little bit. And sort of not easy because James wanted to be doing the rowing, and he did do it as best he could, but he knew it wasn't as good as it would have been if he didn't have a sort of a sore back. So there was this sort of,
Did his body sort of adapt or recover in the end, or was it like that for the rest of?
Well, certainly, but I think the closer we got to Antigua, we started to pick up more tailwinds, and so the motion of the boat became a lot easier. So that was and then once he'd been ashore for a couple of days, I think it was just quite a quick recovery. And
so it wasn't until he got on land that it
finally shifted.
Yeah.
But
that must have been tough for him.
Yeah, I think. When you're in a team, you don't want to not be able to do anything but your best, and then just knowing that was there. But pain is always uncomfortable because it doesn't go away. So it's something else you're having to work on. So you're having to press the delete button on your sort of mindset to get that discomfort. And you can do that for a while, but that just becomes a trying process. So, yeah. But, credit to James. He stuck at it and did the very best that he could in their trying circumstances. But the nice thing was, as I said, towards the end, we did get more of a following sea. So the last day, we both rowed the boat together for the whole day, and that was just being able to do that. So we felt like it was a finish on a real high there.
Oh, amazing. What when you're out there, I suppose I envisage it being quite sparse. Would that be correct, or do you get nuances and differences with the days, or is it kind of pretty much just horizon.
Yeah, well, you can't actually see Red because the boat sits low in the water. You've only got a couple of mile view to the horizon, so
Right.
the things are a bit limited there in one sense. But it's easy to see beyond that sort of immediate sort of circle of water that's around you. So cloud formations change quite a bit during the daytime, so
Yeah.
that was interesting. Seeing that. We had a couple of times when it rained really, really heavily. So you could see this huge black cloud and you're thinking, is that going to end up coinciding with it?
Yeah.
Sometimes, I think we were fortunate we just sort of didn't have that. But on 2 occasions, we were just completely sort of under this deluge of water. And it was an amazing experience really, because the visibility all closed in around us. The top layer of the ocean just went white with all the raindrops falling out. And then we had a bucket out on deck that started to fill up. So, just in a very short space of time, you had 3 or 4 inches of water that comes down.
Wow.
But it wasn't cold. So
Sure.
it was just an interesting experience.
So were you pretty much warm the entire?
Sometimes at night, in the first couple of weeks, nighttime was a bit cool, so you needed to have some extra layers on there. But the further it went on, the warmer it got, really. So So I'd say it's in the first couple of weeks that you felt the nighttime temperature just that bit cooler.
Because you leave from, is it Spain, Portugal?
It's La Gomera is a Spanish island. Next, you've got Tenerife, and they're very close to Tenerife. You've got La Gomera, and that was the starting point. So it's
Right.
It's a Spanish island, yeah.
Tenerife is the
Canary Islands.
Canaries. Yes, yeah.
That was the starting point. But I think, going back to that question of, what else in terms of the environment, you're very aware of it being an ocean environment because you'd see fish jump out of the water underneath the boat.
Yeah.
With dorada fish, and at night time, if you shone a torch under the boat, these dorada fish, if you looked under the boat during the daytime, so that was all quite interesting. We regularly saw dolphins, saw a couple of whales. So, that sort of broke up the day because things would happen around you, from that point of view. I think also you're very aware of, you're part of a much bigger universe than you can imagine when, particularly if you're somewhere where you can't see the stars very well because of light pollution. But
Absolutely.
the stars were quite extraordinary if it wasn't cloudy. So you had this sort of feeling of being in a snow. If you shook a snow dome up and you got all the little bits of snow around you, if there's little bits of snow with the stars, that's how it felt sometimes, because
Amazing.
this wraparound sort of feel of all the stars around.
Wow.
So that was good. And also, we're tracking across there. In the morning, we would see the sunrise. In the evening, because we're traveling west, we'd see the sunset.
Sure.
So you've got this sort of pattern of the day, the rhythm of that. So that was all. Yeah. I think maybe we're that way out, but we did sort of feel, we are in an amazing place. We are in an amazing world. That connection with creation there. That was good. And some of it was quite funny that, there's sometimes you'd see a little fish has jumped out of the water and there's a bigger fish following it. And these birds, as we got closer, to Antigua would be flying around, and they would swoop down and pick off this little fish that's jumped out of the water. So you'd always be thinking, I wonder what the big fish thought, because suddenly this little fish has vanished. And that was all amazing. Those are frigate birds. I mean, they are quite big birds, but they can't land in the water. They haven't got oiled feathers, so they swoop down, and then in sort of an ungainly fashion, but quite a precise fashion.
Wow.
To pick out a little fish and disappear off with it.
So they must come pretty far off the coast, do they?
Yeah, about 500 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. So they can cruise a long way. So things like that were all good. Trying to think there were other stuff that you noticed that certainly at night time, if it was cloudy, it was like being down a coal mine. I mean, everything is just really severely dark around you. And so being enveloped in the night is quite an experience there.
Sure.
But also you'd have days where there's no cloud. You've got, a bright moon shining across the ocean. And as you're dipping your oars into the water, you get this phosphorescence in the ocean. And that's a whole different environment there of just appreciating that. So,
wow. Yeah, I bet that was quite the spectacle.
Yeah, and often I think James and I both say, if there was a way that you could be sort of transported out into the ocean for a couple of days, and the weather was going to be nice, and you knew you're going to see some of those things, you'd buy that ticket every time. I think that the prospect of organising a whole project to do the whole thing again probably.
Yeah, that ticket price is quite high, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think that would work for us now, because James and his wife, their own family, and I think at the point we did it sort of worked well for both of us, and as far as it could do for the rest of the family. But probably that'd be a difficult one to revisit that.
Yeah, imagine James would have been, what was he, about 18 at the time?
He was 18 like at the start, and he had his 19th birthday at sea. Yeah, so he is still one of the youngest people to
amazing
cross an ocean. Yeah.
It's quite a story, and I think must have been really nice to do that sort of at the end of his, becoming an adult and
yes,
doing these challenges and stuff. It's it's really nice. So what about in terms of writing the book?
Yes.
Did you do some of that aboard, or?
Yeah, we hadn't really planned to write a book. I have to say, a number of people that have been following the blogs that we'd written said or suggested to us that we could use the material that we put into the blogs as a sort of a foundation for writing the story of what we did. And so I think because I already had that material there, and I thought what we've written about there is a little bit quirky. It's a bit different from other people's, maybe slightly more serious iterations of what they were doing and how they got on. I thought that maybe that would work, but I think probably about a third of the book is how we get to the start line, actually.
Yeah.
The first third of it is trying to explain. We didn't just arrive in La Gomera and off we went. There was a whole sort of back catalogue of events and stories that led up to that. So some of those were from my childhood of growing up, and the primary school teacher I had at the time put a map of the world on the classroom wall, and we followed Francis Chichester's voyage when he sailed around the world. This was plotted onto the map, and I was in school in Swanage and Dorset, which is quite a long way from where Francis Chichester finished in Plymouth. But the teacher walked us up onto the headland, just outside Swanage there, to see if we could see if down in the coast,
Right.
which I think it's impossible to do. I don't even with binoculars,
Yeah.
down the coast, but you couldn't see them. But just, I think her sort of,
That wonder, isn't it?
all the class of small children in what was an amazing adventure that was going on, and being able to burst in the world for someone this voyage. Obviously struck a chord with me. And, I think growing up, my own parents were good at allowing us freedom to do lots of mini adventures. Whether that was doing some cycle camping with my brother, or allowing us to go off and do something when we were in the Scouts as a bit of an adventure and stuff. That all, I suppose, was grist to the mill, really, in sort of forming or sort of getting some ideas into your mind. I remember a great aunt bought me the book Kon-Tiki by Thor Heyerdahl, and that whole sort of balsa wood raft voyage across the Pacific. Reading that, I don't know, when I was 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah.
It wasn't something I thought I desperately want to go and do that, but it was just the fact that people were doing adventurous things. When the first moon landing was on, my brother and I, before school, would put the television on to see what the latest was. But often on that, there was a thing called, I think it just came up on the screen, simulation. So there was a drawing of the space capsule, because there was no television of the space capsule going through space. So there's just this picture of the capsule on the television. And that was it. And I think there was maybe a little clock going saying how long it was since they'd had liftoff. And my brother and I probably watched that for 20 minutes before we go to school. And that was it. Let's just cool.
Yeah.
That's all there was. And then later on in the day, I suppose, a bit more, and then talking about what had happened, what the latest news was and stuff.
It's a bit like what I mentioned before, isn't it? It's that the beauty is almost in the wonder and not being able to see everything, because, it's a bit like when you look at a map. I remember I had a big one for a long time, big map in my dining room. I used to just stare at it, and it's that sort of just letting the imagination go, isn't it?
Yes.
It can really help.
Yeah.
What would you, because obviously it's these days for parents, bringing up children in this environment, and obviously we know the whole argument with TikTok and iPads and all the rest of it. What advice would you give to any parents out there that are wanting their children to sort of foster a healthy relationship with adventure, not mollycoddle, but have that balance?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it is difficult because people are often saying, well, you can't do that because there's an element of danger. But, everything's dangerous. And just watching the news yesterday, there were people coming back into the UK from Sudan. And I think that reporters said, well, they're now safe in the UK. And that's relative safety.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, today there will be events that happen in the UK that are completely outside of people's control, which don't always have a good outcome. And, you can't escape from that entirely. I think there's some common sense things that everyone ought to be aware of, because it's easy to put yourself in harm's way when, if you'd actually thought about it a bit more, you could have approached things differently, and you would have had a different outcome. So, just simple things. If you're going to go in a boat, wear a buoyancy aid or a life jacket. Don't think you won't fall overboard, because you might do. So there's some things there that are just very easy to deal with. It makes the worst case scenario of just falling out of the rowing boat or whatever else a very different place to be, because you just got a bit of safety equipment with you, or you've gone for a walk. Does anyone know where you've gone? If that's, So there's lots of very simple things that you can do. You can't eliminate all risks. I think probably my sort of take on things is you have a proportionate view on things. So you put in place what you can to eliminate the major risks. There'll always be, at the end of it, some residual risk. And you've got to make a judgment then. Is what you're left with acceptable?
Because I suppose without any risk, there's no form of character building,
and that's it. Then you can say, well, why do it? So I think that there's got to be. I think for young people, there is a sense of wanting to explore. I think there's some research being done, particularly with young men, that if there isn't a sort of an opportunity for them to have adventure or to try and work out what they're able to do, in extreme cases, they end up being the people that might try and run across the railway line, or ride on the back of the train when it leaves the station. And, there are things out there that people do that are sort of like inherently very, very risky. And I think some of the rationale there is it's a male thing that you want to try and sort of see what you can do and what's possible. But in the absence of it being done in a sort of a reasoned and thought out way, people invent sort of perhaps not very
other ways of acting out that sort of
it does happen.
Testosterone. And
yeah. I mean, I suppose an extreme end of it, and not everybody does that, but at an extreme ends of it, that sort of thing does happen. So I think it is good to go and do simple things. And certainly in my life, I mean, some of those simple things would have been, I guess, we persuaded my mum and dad to let us camp in the garden.
Yeah.
So I would have been, I don't know, 8 years old, and just sleeping outside in this little tent in the garden. It was just like an amazing adventure. That was absolutely brilliant. And my dad had a very small Calagas one-burner stove. When we were a bit older, my brother and I were allowed to go, and we camped on a farm. It was a few miles away, with the farmer's permission. So we cycled there, and my dad took some stuff for us to so that we couldn't fit on the bike, in terms of like the tent and the sleeping bag and the food supplies and stuff. And my brother and I cycled there, and then my dad turned up and we put this tent up. But it's just like the big adventure of, it wouldn't have been amazing food. We probably had a tin of baked beans and some corned beef, but it was just the adventure. We opened a tin of whatever it was and put it in a pan, and it got heated up and we ate it. And, all incredibly simple, really, but just...
Yeah, baked beans and camping stoves.
Yeah.
It's a very sort of British experience, isn't it? It's something I remember as well, and that simplicity and is really great.
But I think as well, it's good to have imagination. My mother bought a lilo. This is back in the 60s, so she could lie in comfort on the beach. My brother and my sister and myself ended up frequently commandeering that, and because it floated, that was our boat on this little bit of sea side water. And there were all sorts of adventures there, that people being the captain, and I was frequently the engine room, so I wasn't really on the lilo, because
give us the legs.
Without being on the back, having to kick, so I was bolshing it. Because if we all got on it, I think it just tipped over, or it couldn't support us. But it was just like, a whole imagination going on there. Yeah, certainly growing up, I remember there was program called The Underwater Adventures of Jacques Cousteau, I think it was called.
Right.
It was all about, his adventures of scuba diving and things like that. And a friend of mine at primary school, we both had, or managed to persuade our parents to let us buy a diving mask and a snorkel and some flippers. And we would go into, again, it was quite shallow water, but, pretended to be Jacques Cousteau. And it died down and you pick up a shell, but you could have just got from the beach if you walked back onto the sand. But we got it from the bottom of the sea, this little shell. But things like that, this all had little bits in there, I suppose, that it was fun to do, and it was a bit of an adventure. So that all those sort of like mini adventure experiences, I think, build up something in your character or what interests you to do. Certainly for me, that sort of mushroomed out from there. I mean, I guess for other people, it might not be the same thing at all, but I think sometimes it's called rites of passage. So if you're going to say, what rites of passage for children, I think being able to have some adventure and to be able to use their imagination and do, I think that's got to be important stuff. And being able to go out and just see the stars at night time, go out and see, can we see a shooting star and see how, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but it's just.
Well, it's the sort of thing you see. It's a bit of a cliche, but usually, if you're in a situation where, a kid's into playing on games or whatever, but they actually get them away from the device and go out camping or do something like that, it always works. It's like the whole Outward Bound and YMCA and all that. And I think it's so important. I think we're certainly losing some of that because you might know more about this than me, but I don't know. The Scouts and the Cubs isn't probably, I don't think, as popular as it would have been.
I think if you want to go on the Scouts, there's a waiting list. I think Scouting.
Well, that's good. Do you know the Scouts? There was a waiting list when I was at school.
Yeah. So I think those things are good, and certainly Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme. I think the number of people that are wanting to engage with that is, again, mushrooming and growing. So there are adventures out there, and and it's okay. And I think as well, sometimes there's a bit of a misconception that everything, is unpleasant, so you're going to get soaking wet or you're going to get whatever. So I think with a bit of thought, it doesn't have to be quite like that. So a friend of mine once said that any fool can be cold and miserable in a tent. So it's easy to think of being in a tent and it's all going wrong. But I think if you go through and you think, well, what do we need to take with us? And there's been a bit of a thought process, and hopefully, the right steps have been taken, so the experience is enjoyable. But also, you can set yourself if this starts happening, it's time to finish, and we'll not carry on. So you decide what ends up being we're going back. No, we're not going to do it. So,
Excellent. And what about one of the thoughts I had was around that conversation that you must have had with your employer to get the time off. Were there any sort of tactics other than sort of charm, or what sort of tips could if someone's looking at planning something like this for themselves?
Yeah. Well, I think you're always trying to get a win-win situation, aren't you? You're always trying to say, well, this is something I would like to do, but the benefits for the organisation that you work with would be this and this and this. So and it depends whether they understand what the event is. So you might have to go through an exploration of this is the event I'm taking part in, and it's well attested to, it's well thought of. It attracts this amount of publicity and interest, and you could explain it in those terms, and it would be perhaps a good vehicle for them to be part of in the way that they supported you to participate in it. So certainly that is something my employers at the University of Birmingham were excellent with. So they embraced what was going on, and I think it was one of those things. A lot of people got into what we were doing, and supported the fundraising, the media side of it. The university set up the website for us. So again, there were benefits there that our employer or my employer provided for us. Not necessarily in hard cash, but in lots of other ways that saved us having to either spend time doing that, which we didn't have necessarily all the time to do, or they had expertise in and were able to set stuff up like the website and manage that for us. So we provided the copy and the photos and details, but someone else put it all together. So that was a time saver, but also a money saver, and what they did looked really, really good, and so that supported the project in that way. So yeah,
seems that relationships and sort of networks and networking seems really key to something like this.
It is an interesting one. Well, I think, just as we were talking at the very beginning, I was saying, well, it's very difficult to know everything yourself. So as soon as you move away from I know everything, you tend to do a lot better because you're then saying other people will have a view or more expertise or knowledge in this than I've got. So you're then tapping into a much bigger resource rather than just relying on your own ability. So, I certainly think that goes a long way with it. But it can be, pressure release as well, because you then tapped in to things, and sometimes it just leads to unexpected circumstances come along. So, where I worked in the Lake District, an outdoor ed centre on the other side of the lake got in touch to say, could I come and do a talk for some guests that they had at the centre? And so this was about what we were going to do, because we actually hadn't completed anything at that stage. We were still in that getting the boat ready stage. I remember I was just really, really tired at the end of this day, and I cycled around to do the this presentation, and this group of 30 adults, they're all very interested, and they asked some great questions at the end. And I thought, okay, had a bit of a whip round, and they gave us a bit of cash for having taken the time. So I thought that's all helpful, because it like all add into the support we're raising. And then this gentleman said to me, what are you doing for batteries? So I was thinking, well, we haven't, and I may even have started saying something like, well, the torches that we've got are going to, need AAA batteries, and we'll take some spares. I may have started off saying that. And he said, no batteries to power the electrics on the boat. So I said, I said, we haven't quite got there yet. And he said, then, I work for Excite Batteries, and he was one of the directors. So he arranged to have delivered to us 2 marine batteries. So the value of the 2 batteries was about £500.
Wow.
So that got delivered to us. And suddenly, we put Excite logo on the side of the boat because they then became one of our sponsors. They got their details on the boat and details on the website as one of the sponsors. So they got something from that. But that was just massive, really. And we didn't have to work out where to source it from. We didn't have to find another £500. And it all got delivered when we wanted it to the boat. And that was amazing.
Yes.
So that was sort of like a connection that came from another person we knew, and just events lined up, and
You never know what's going to come from meeting different people there.
no. So that was terrific. And there are other things similarly of that sort of nature which sort of cropped up. Remember, there was a guy that worked as a dentist that we knew. He came and brought like a DIY emergency dental kit round to us with some instructions of what to do if your filling fell out. And
Oh, right.
because on a very practical level, that was important. That was an extra item in the first aid kit.
I love it. Yeah. We could have all done with that during lockdown, maybe.
We could have done. Yes. Yeah. We don't really want to be doing emergency dental stuff, but it's yeah.
No. Is there anything, so if you did it again now, is there sort of one sort of over it, think, oh, I'd have done that differently, or?
Really? I think possibly we would have tried to get the boat to the seaside and rowed on some rougher water. That probably would have been a good thing. So
Okay.
the training that we did in the boat all happened on Coniston Water, and
Yeah.
we did that partly because
Convenience.
convenience, because that's where we were based. Partly from a sense of we didn't need a rescue boat to be around us. We could just row up and down, and we did 2 big training sessions. I mean, sometimes we just went out for a couple of hours, but we did 2 big things. One was a 24-hour continuous row, and we tried to do everything on the boat like it would be on the sea. So one of us rowed for 2 hours, one of us slept for 2 hours. We only took food on the boat that we were going to be using on the ocean. We only took equipment on the boat that we would be using on the ocean.
Yeah.
And later on, before we went out, we did 48 hours rowing up and down Coniston Water with that same routine. So that was really, really valuable. But what it didn't give us was the sort of wave patterns that you get on the ocean. And I think that would probably have been a helpful thing. But
Was that your typical sort of cadence when you were at sea, 2 on, 2 off?
yeah, we did.
That's something I've been wondering.
Yeah, at night. Well, when we did the 24 and the 48-hour row, the person that rowed at night time rowed for 4 hours, and then they had 4 hours off. And the idea was it then gave the resting rower a better sleep.
At least 4 hours solid rather than right.
And we did start that on the row when we were out at sea, but after sort of 4 or 5 days, it became very, very difficult for the person that was doing the rowing to actually put up with sitting on the seat for that late for off.
Right.
As they ended up getting a sore bum. So we then went to this, okay, let's do 2 hours and 2 hours. And in retrospect now, probably what we should have done was go with a 3-hour night time.
Best of both. Yeah.
That might have done better. There's a few other things possibly, we've talked about since, whether we could have done a bit more with both of us rowing at the same time. We did try that on the ocean at a few points, but the sort of setup on the boat made that a bit tricky because you had to clear everything out of the way. Whereas if one person rowed and one person didn't, there was a bit more space on deck for other items that you didn't have to tidy. So it's just organisation and the space on the boat. But I think now with some of the boat designs now, it probably is much easier to do 2 people rowing at the same time for longer periods. So
Right.
So that we did try. It didn't seem to work quite for us, so we stuck with that 2 on, 2 off. And then the last day we both rowed because we knew we didn't need any of the other stuff on the deck, so we just chucked it all in the cabin.
Yeah.
And it's got it out of the way, and then the boat was just set up for the two of us to row. So it just goes along a bit better, I suppose, and there's the motivation.
Sure, that final sprint.
Yeah, it was. Yes, yeah, a bit of a final burst.
So obviously, you're a keen cyclist.
Yeah.
You still cycling at the moment?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So
Was it Land's End, and then the island ones? Is that?
Yeah. So that's James's fault. If the Atlantic Row was my fault for having that as an idea,
Right.
We were driving James back to university in Sheffield, and he said to me, "Oh, it'll be quite interesting or a bit of a laugh to get a tandem and cycle Land's End to John O'Groats." So that sparked an idea. So then we were looking on eBay for second-hand tandems and working out, well, how long would it take to do that and when would we do it. So it boiled down in the end, I think at the end of James's first year at university, with other stuff that he was doing, we had 1 week where this whole thing had to fit in. So that involved a day to drive to Land's End, do the cycle, and then drive back from John O'Groats to Sheffield because he was moving all his stuff into different accommodation, and that all had to be sort of engineered this particular day. So it all fell into, everything had to fit into this one week.
Do you think it was quicker on a tandem than it would be on a regular?
Well, tandem, it depends. See, the thing is, it all depends, is the answer, on the type of terrain. So as soon as you get to a hill, cycling up a hill on the tandem tends to be slower than on a regular bike.
Right.
And when it comes to going down a hill, the speed the tandem picks up is phenomenal. So that's great as long as you're on a road where you feel comfortable.
Sure.
Is
absolutely hammering it.
that speed that you suddenly picked up. So some of that, I guess, just requires a bit of careful judgment that you don't overcook it going down or with this extra speed. But yeah, I think overall the feeling is because of the sort of the hilly terrain, trying to get out of Cornwall, Devon, you are up and down there a lot. Coming up through the Midlands, Cheshire Plain, up until we got probably to Lancashire, that was a bit more. There were hills, but it tended to favour tandem cycling, I think. And then, yeah, certainly going out of the Lake District and then some of the Scottish hills, yeah, that was a bit slower going. So, yeah.
Do you prefer being up front or behind?
It tended to work better when James was on the front of the tandem. I think partly because he's taller than I am. And there's slightly, in terms of adjustments you can make on the bike, it worked slightly better that the taller person was on the front. But we did swap, partly just because it meant you had a change of posture, and whoever was on the front had more thinking to do because they controlled all the gear changes as well as brakes and steering. So every so often we did do a bit of swapping just to break things up a bit.
Yeah.
But overall, it did work better with James on the front doing all of that. But yeah, so we did that. And then afterwards, we thought, well, we've got on one end of, from England up to Scotland. So is there something similar in Ireland? Certainly with my wife Christine's home being in Ireland, that's where she's also. We thought, well, that'd be quite good to sort of do that as well as having done up through the sort of English counties into Scotland.
Yeah.
We came across an event called Race Around Ireland, which is an ultra distance cycle challenge. It's one lap of Ireland, so it's 1,350 miles of cycling, which in itself, although it's quite a long way, isn't the main sort of thing that's focusing your attention. There's 22,000 meters of climbing. So
Right.
every day, that's a lot of height gain. And okay, you do go downhill, but the roads that you're on aren't necessarily, it's not just a straight line down a hill. They're quite technical. Some of the road surface is a bit broken.
Yeah.
And some of it's what they call Irish motorway. So it's like a single track with the central reservation. It's just like green grass up
Oh, really?
the single track. So you've got quite a narrow bit of tarmac that you're trying to cycle on in places. So, and that wasn't extensive, but we did come across that in a few places. That, and it was all sight unseen. We'd never cycled round this route. So everything that you came across, that's the first time you've ever been on that road surface. So you got no idea where the potholes are. So all at the moment, it's a bit of a challenge. But also, you've got 5.5 days to do the whole thing.
Right.
So the clock starts at a place called Trim, which is just north of Dublin. And if you stop to get off the bike, to stretch or to have something to eat, the clock still runs. So
Yeah.
you're very much aware if we stopped because we don't know where we are, we've got a bit lost, time just carries on ticking and you've got less time to complete it. So anyway, we tried that in the first instance as a tandem pair. So we were the first people to take part in this event on a tandem bike. But sadly, in the run-up to it, James got an infection and he's been treated with antibiotics. And it wasn't a good sort of entry into it, really.
Sure.
I'm feeling a bit poorly in any description. So, having said that, we sort of keeping up with the schedule that we needed to be on. But gradually, things started to slip. So we got to the halfway point at Limerick, or just after the halfway point was Limerick, and half of the time had gone. So in a way, you think, well, that's okay. We should be able to do the rest of it. But physically, we knew we were in a different shape at the halfway point than we were at the beginning. So James was struggling to eat stuff and to keep it in him. So it just became like, when you're weighing up, is it sensible? Is this risky? You just thought, it's just not worth
Just to make that call. Yeah.
risking someone's health. So we, very reluctantly bowed out. It was quite a difficult thing, actually, to stop.
I'm sure. But you went back, did you?
We did, yeah. I think the thing that was difficult about it was that the row we'd succeeded. We'd done the Land's End John O'Groats, and we put a huge amount of preparation into this tandem bike ride. But just events didn't quite be able to record. I think one of the other things, the night before the start, a hen party arrived in the hotel we were staying in, and we got virtually zero sleep. And that just, again,
not a good way to start, is it?
That was So you've used up some of your resources already there, just managing with not getting a proper night's sleep now. But anyway, we did return, so we went back a few years later, and we entered a different class of the event. So I went to cycle the solo race, and James was part of the support team,
right,
backing up the efforts. So we had another go at it. But I went into that feeling really confident because we had the experience of the same support crew pretty much going over. So they knew more about the event. We'd done some tweaking in our own sort of preparations, and we went into it all feeling like we're going to, sort of make our way around. Certainly not win the event, but get round the course in the allotted.
Sure.
The start of it couldn't have been more than sort of 3 hours into the event. I hit a pothole and came off the bike. But the bike was okay, but all the usual places when you fall off a bike, like your knees, elbow, shoulder, hip, all of that just got, bad grazes and road rash, and obviously eventually bruises come out. And I badly skinned my knuckles as well. So
Right.
there's a lot of trying to stop the bleeding, and
That sounds pretty brutal.
and what do you do? I mean, you've only just started, so all the support team, all the preparation everyone's done, it all feels like this can't be this can't be going to finish this. But anyway, once I sort of got patched up a bit, we did restart. So I carried on, and to be fair, I mean, it did feel, although it wasn't very comfortable cycling, it did feel like we were still going to manage it. So we got all the way down to the southwest corner of Ireland, to Mizen Head. That's sort of like 950 or nearly 1,000 miles of this 1,350 route done. And we sort of had like a day and a half to finish it in the allotted 132 hours. So there was enough time to finish, but I'd ended up getting a horrible sort of saddle sore, like pressure sore on the bottom. And I couldn't put up with sitting on the bike anymore. So I'd had a day and a half of taking painkillers, trying to sort of eliminate this pain. But yeah, that was just, again, a complete sort of, you can't believe we got this close, but we're not going to finish it now. Sort of to it all. Certainly for me, it's all right. I mean, I felt I was letting the team down because they backed me up. None of us had had any sleep hardly for days on end. Everyone is exhausted. Just felt we're so close to the finish here, but I just couldn't do it. So the legs had it in them, but I just couldn't sit on the bike. So that was it. So we had to sort of call time on that. Another couple of years went by, and James and I decided, let's enter a different category. So we went back and we entered what's called the pairs category. So this, I mean, it is a bit easier doing it because one person's on the bike, the other person gets driven by the support team further up the course. And then as the incoming rider reaches the outgoing rider and you overlap, the incoming rider stops, the outgoing rider carries on. And whoever had been riding puts their bike in the support vehicle, gets driven ahead, and then you wait for the cyclist to come into your place on the course.
Right, I see.
Become the guy riding again, and the other guy becomes the rest. So it is a bit easier doing that because ostensibly, you'd sort of riding hearts. So I'm pleased to say we did complete that. So it's
Amazing.
so time round. And a lot of different thoughts really with it, Jason. I mean, one thought at one point was, does it really matter? Do we have to ever go back and do it again? So part of the thinking was, we don't really have to do this. It's it isn't a defining thing that we've got to do it. I don't know if you've ever seen the film, well, you probably have seen the film Cool Runnings, where
I haven't actually.
You'll need to see it because this story might sort of ring a bell with you a bit more if you watch the film. But the Jamaican bobsleigh guys come out of the sled. It crashes when they're competing in the Winter Olympics. And that did happen in real life at the Calgary Winter Olympics. But in the film version, what happens is they're quite close to the finish line, and they actually pick up the bobsleigh and put it on their shoulders and walk to the finish line. So that never happened in reality.
Right.
It's the guy that was the sort of the team leader for the Jamaican bobsled thing. He just said to his teammates, "I've got to finish the race." That's his word on it. So they'd done all this preparation, and although it wasn't finishing quite in the way they'd imagined, they needed to get to the finish line. So that's what they do. And I think for James and I, there was a bit of that, really. There's a bit of feeling that
Sure.
we like to complete something that
Got to close that sort of, close the chat, close the book on it, really.
a little bit of that. I mean, that was all unnecessary, and I guess, we didn't necessarily, we didn't have to, but it was part of us felt that would be a good end to do
I think that if it's clearly in your nature to sort of be doing challenges and finishing challenges. So, yeah, I fully expect that that would have been the approach that you'd take to give it another go.
give it another go. But, having done some talks about the bike ride, I mean, I have talked to people about it's okay to try and do the very best that you can and walk away from it and say, we did what we set out to, we participated, we've done the very best that we could do with the resources that we had. And in each of those instances, we were raising money for charity, and that was all a good thing. So there's lots of positives to come out of it, but it was just, I guess, for James and I, as the riders, there was a sense of it hadn't quite done what we'd hoped
Yeah.
to do in terms of completing that event. And certainly, I mean, Race Round Ireland is a very difficult event, and I think we went into it feeling a little bit like, when you change school and suddenly you're the new boy in the big boys' playground. There's some very eminent cyclists that do these ultra distance events taking part, and we did feel a little bit like, we're the little fish in the big fish.
Yeah, an interesting dynamic when you compare that to the row.
Yeah.
Which probably, in some ways, because you were sort of in your own sort of element and things, psychologically it must have been a very sort of different challenge.
And they all made it an event in one sense, because with the Atlantic row, we'd stayed out on the water another 5 days. It wouldn't have mattered. We'd have still got to the end. Whereas the Race Around Ireland, you've got 132 hours, and if you don't finish after 132 hours, it's a DNF, did not finish. That's all the acknowledgement for all the efforts. This competitor did not finish the challenge. So so that's always the problem with having something that's time bound in that way.
Sure.
There is a cut-off, and you haven't got to the end in that time. It's not that the organisers are wanting to diminish the effort that you put in, but there was a standard set, I suppose. That's the height the bar was, and to get the finishers medal, you had to do it in that time frame. Yeah.
And are you still cycling these days?
I do, yes, yeah. But Christine and I, this summer, something August and September time, we are taking our bikes on the ferry over to St Malo, in Brittany, and we're going to cycle down to the Mediterranean. So it's about 1,000 miles.
Do you know, Norman, I was looking at doing this last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I had this little idea, and literally I thought I'd cycle to the Rock. And so it's interesting you say that, to Gibraltar, So
Yeah.
don't know whether I can get the time off work, to be honest. But
Well, the amazing is that, we are doing it quite leisurely.
yeah.
Rather than anything else. But we've created our own timeline because we booked some accommodation, bed and breakfast. So we do need to get to the next bed and breakfast. But I think we're doing about 50 miles a day.
Yeah.
So it's not race round. I mean, in Race Round Ireland, you've got to cycle nearly 280 miles every 24 hours to get round the course in the time. So there's no time pressure of that dimension. And there's no disgrace to say Christian is using an electric bike.
Absolutely not.
He's got a little bit of assistance from the motor. You still got a pedal, but it's a little bit of a lift there from that. So, so we're
a great thing to do.
Yeah, so we're doing a bit of going out training together at the moment.
It's active retirement.
It is. Yeah. So it's a different challenge in that sense. Very different sort of adventure. But we're looking forward to it. I mean, I think the thing that we're not quite sure about is what sort of temperatures we're going to get in Europe. Because last summer it was 40 plus degrees in France. So you're thinking, well, that'll be a bit, sapping if we get that sort of temperature. I think if it ends up being like that, we'll just have to get up very early in the morning.
Yeah.
And just try and, get the mileage done. But quite a bit of the cycle route that we're on follows canal networks in France. So maybe there's scope for some sort of shade under the trees at places. I don't think that'll be the case all the way, but maybe for some of it. Yeah. We'll see.
Oh, well, excellent. Well, I wish you both the best of luck, and this probably brings this nicely to a close.
Yeah, okay.
But I really appreciate you taking the time out.
Yeah.
And it's been really fascinating to hear all your adventures and stuff, and it's good to see that you're both doing well and enjoying your retirement.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.